So here we have an RS or an SR latch, depending on what you want to call it. And the idea of an RS or SR latch is that it remembers its state, right? So it remembers the state it had regardless of the input change. So we have a set, but the black one can be the set and the red one can be the reset. We have a set and reset input, and this orange LED will be the set input, set output, and the green one be the reset. And the idea is these should always have the opposite state. So if this is on, this should be off, and if this is on, this should be off. Now, how this is wired is the input from this button, the input from the set button goes to gate 6 of this NOR gate. The input of this button goes to gate 6 of this NOR gate, and the other input to this NOR gate is the output of this NOR gate. So from 1 to 5. So 6 and 5 are the inputs to the NOR gate, and 4 is the output. And now the output of this NOR gate feeds into number 3 of this NOR gate, and it's and the input of this button goes into number 2. So both of these NOR gates are feeding into each other. And so what's happening is, currently it's going to remember its state because it's when it has an initial state of 0, when it has an initial state of 1, so when I press down the button, it had an initial state of 1, and because a NOR gate is always false when one of the inputs is 1, it meant that if this black button was 1, it meant that this output was 0. Okay, this output was 0, so you have an input of 0 going into here, and you have an input of 0 coming in from this button, so this turns on. And now if I click this button, you can see that no matter if I keep it as 1 or 0, this button turns on. You can see no matter how many times I click it, it stays on. But when I click the reset latch, it switches. And that's because when I suddenly changed the input of this to 1, and the other input is also 1, the NOT gate output is 0, so you suddenly have a 0, 0 input to the other NOT gate, which gives you a 1. So now this will switch to a 1, and it will also remember its state. So if I click this a bunch of times, doesn't matter, it's not going to change. The second I click the set button, it switches. So it remembers its state because I can only switch by clicking the set or reset. But the problem with an SR latch is that you can also have an invalid state where if I click both of these, it turns off. And now while this technically is an invalid current, the reason it's an invalid latch is because these two LEDs should have opposite states at all time, and the fact that they're both off means that the same state, which is invalid. So if I just click back, if I let go again, it should always be like this.